Sports Show presents House of Rugby.
Hello, and you're all very welcome to House of Rugby. My name's Máire Treasa Ní Dhubhghaill, and in studio with me this week is lovely James Downey and Lindsay Peat. You're both very welcome. James, you became a dad for the second time since you were in here last. Is coffee your best friend now again?
Yeah, at the moment. Yeah. No, it's nice to get out and get some fresh air and see there's life outside the four walls. But no, it's good to be out.
Oh, good. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And Lindsay, congratulations to you. You kept it quiet, but you're now a Líochra Gael. Tell us all.
Oh God, yeah, I am. It's not as exciting, yeah. I won't even bore you with that. I have very little Irish, unfortunately, but yeah, as you can see, pretty overwhelmed still. The fact that I'm among a very bespoke group. So yeah, huge thank you to Nematon, TG Cahir and to Miriam Fitzsimons, the producer, who hopefully has done a good job. I haven't seen it yet, so I need to see it before.
When can we see you on the telly?
Oh God, the 8th of February is my one.
Well,
which is Thursday at 9:30. Yeah, you can throw darts at the telly, but look,
never.
Look, privileged, and it was a lovely way, to be honest, to look back at my career and all the amazing people. I suppose it's great with the trophies, and I've been very privileged to be successful in that way, but it really does, underneath it all, come back to the people that you've played with and against, and the coaches and the mentors. I'm sure James can echo that with his own career. So it's a lovely way for me to look back, and my son is involved, and to bring him in and hopefully pass on the bug of just the love of something, whether that's sport for him or whatever, just the love of life or whatever he decides to create his happy place. So yeah, just thank you to everyone who's been a part of the journey.
Well deserved, Lindsay. Well, before we get stuck into the Six Nations chat, we'll look back at the weekend's games in round 4 of the Champions Cup, and we'll go in chronological order. It was a brilliant team performance and win for Connacht on Friday night in the newly named Dexcom Stadium. I have to get my head around that one. They got the better of the Bristol Bears, but because Saracens beat Leon, they're still out of the Champions Cup, but they're through to the round of 16 of the Challenge Cup. So were you impressed by their performance, James?
Oh, very much so. I think you saw a lot of players given an opportunity there, and I just think that at home in front of that it's going to be hard to come across with that, isn't it? It's like, do you go along the sign of the Parky Queever having the same issue? But it's going to be difficult. But look, in the way Connacht went out in front of that crowd and produced that performance, especially against Pat Lam as well, obviously of the parish previously, and having won the Pro 12, 14, the Pro 12 at that time. So it's a great performance by them. It's just a pity that they just hadn't done enough in the earlier rounds to be able to be in the mix and to get into that round of 16. But they've got to be really happy with how they performed, especially up front. I really thought they took it to that Bristol pack, got on top of them physically, and there's some superb finishing out wide. And Andrew Smith, the try that would have been a worldie of a finish. Yeah. Don't know if only the touch judge had kind of been a little bit lenient. Maybe there's a shadow there, but what a finish that was. But if you haven't seen it, please do. Andrew Smith's no try against Bristol.
It was definitely a try.
Oh, look, I think it was millimetres they were gone, and I was nearly thinking shadows, the base of his boot, or the back of his boot, of his heel. What a finish, superb, and that comes from the sevens. But he's another player who really stepped up that night and put his hand up. He hasn't figured too much, he's come from sevens. He's one of these players who will try and kick on from here, and I'm sure we'll talk about it with the other provinces, but this break of games now, there's a great opportunity for players to really put their hand up and get some game time. Yeah,
Connacht showed when they click, they're a very, very difficult team to beat, but they've just lacked that continuity and I suppose that ruthlessness and game smarts at times when you look back at the games that they've lost.
I'm glad you said game smart. I think, if I'm honest, I thought that was Connacht's best performance of the season so far. The variety of their play. Caelan Blade was always looking up, as was Hawkshaw, as was Hanrahan. So they were always looking to exploit the gaps with Bristol. Like even Hawkshaw's double pump to create that line break for the first try was excellent. So I just thought, and their speed of ruck was ridiculous, how they cleared it and how quickly they could get to it. And we saw Dennis Buckley even for Ainger's try playing 9, then Murray played 9, then Murray latches Ainger and he gets him over the line, and then we saw skip passes and Andrew Smith's both tries, the disallowed, which I thought was ridiculously harsh, and then the one that he actually finished, skip passes to exploit exactly the width out in the channels, and he was so I suppose disciplined to keep, like, it's hard for wingers when you're not involved in games to keep their width and then when they're called upon to actually make sure and it's finished. So I just thought they were absolutely excellent, and then Hawkshaw and Prendergast to chase back to put pressure on, and the sniff that Bristol had with Manuvu, I can't pronounce his name, I apologise, the winger for Bristol, who had a great break and it would have been another world class try, but he just dropped it on the line. So I just thought a complete performance. I don't think it's a bad thing, to be honest. I'm sure I won't be their favourite, but I think it could be a blessing in disguise to go into the Challenge Cup at the last 16, because personally I would like them to kick on and really challenge to go and win some silverware, and it wouldn't be bad considering they probably want to balance then the URC as well.
And they could really compete in the Challenge Cup now.
Absolutely.
They're against Pau away in the round of 16.
Yeah.
So, we'll see what happens there. Ulster, it was a must-win game for them against Harlequins, but they really came up short against them. It finished 47-19, and despite Ian Henderson saying in the build-up to this game that they play at their best when their backs are up against the wall, they really didn't turn up.
No, and that's going to be the massively disappointing thing for Dan McFarlane. They didn't show anything. Pretty lacked a lot of desire out there, it seems, against an Ulster side, or against a Quinn side, who are a decent side, but they shouldn't have been that far ahead. There's going to be lots of questions, I'm sure, again, behind the scenes with Dan, what's going on with the players, where their mindset is, because they were so slow out of the blocks, and it's frustrating to see Ulster. They've just kind of limped through the last couple of weeks since Christmas. It's just been limping through, and it's disappointing. Maybe has a reflection then on selection for the Irish squad, how many players who would normally be there but aren't in the conversation because they're not performing at club level. And just kind of we spoke so well about Connacht there, and it's just the flip side is just Ulster just haven't been the races this season.
Yeah, what's going on with Ulster? They just look like a team shorn of confidence.
Well, the game itself was helter-skelter and it was madness, but the only team that was going to suit was Quins. I mean, when you have Marcus Smith, they're not afraid to run from deep. I thought Danny Kerr was excellent. He, for 2 tries, exploited, I don't know, that it seemed to come down to basics for me, right? Danny Kerr exploited a chink in the armour where there was no pillar at the ruck, and he just coasted through. Then there was a kind of peel off a maul, and again he just went
Lynham's
blindside.
2 scores as well.
Yeah, Lynham's 2 scores came from just a really just kicked it downfield, exploited the gap in the backfield. There was kind of talk of a bounce of a ball. The bounce of the ball favoured Jacob Stockdale. The bounce of the ball favoured Balakoon. Don't know why he slid on it. Easy for me to say, but yeah, if you're going to dive on a ball, dive that your body's covering it like it's a fire and you want to extinguish it. But it kind of bounced off his knee, his hand, and they were 2 criminal tries. The line out for the first for Nick David's try, that was just like a cheeky line out. It was just a cheeky line out. And so many times, even the Marcus Smith quick tap, Ulster have their back to the ball. That's underage rugby stuff where you expect kids to switch off, but not a professional team. So I am being harsh, but their scores that you're kind of that's just switching off. That's not even a skill set thing. That's just mindset. And really,
the scores just came too easily for Quins. That's the second week in a row now that Ulster have conceded 7 tries, 95 points conceded in 2 games, and it's just not good enough for this level.
No, I think as well, if they hadn't beaten Leinster, you'd be nearly talking crisis maybe, but because they played so poorly, you mentioned their 7 tries last week, 7 again, and that's crazy stuff, and bar that one victory in the RDS, and that's probably due to conditions as well, and they produced one performance. It's just not good enough. It's a flash in the pan, and they need to produce a lot more, and they need to they've a bit of time now to regroup. They've lost a few players, and this is where the core group will need to stand up and go, right, where are we going as a team? What do we want to achieve out of this season? Because the season's on the line.
What needs to change?
It's as simple as a mindset thing, Lindsay made it's these small little things. It's not as if the game plan is wrong or it's not working. It's just the mindset. It seems to be from the players from the outside, switching off, turn around. They're soft scores that are easily fixed, but if one person misses it, it has that knock-on effect, and then once a team goes behind, all heads drop, and that's just the side lacking in confidence.
Yeah, they said, I think it was Stuart McCluskey that was saying they didn't want to be playing in the Challenge Cup, but that's where they find themselves now. Are they good enough to win the Challenge Cup?
I'm not sure right now. I think James is right. Things need to change. I'm sitting here going, we are harsh on them, and the harshness is coming from the fact if you look at their team sheet.
Yeah, they're a talented bunch of players.
Timney, McCluskey, Timney has absolutely earned his call up to the Ireland team. We'll speak about that in a few minutes. Stuart McCluskey, Ian Henderson. kits off Nathan Doak, John Cooney, Billy Burns. I mean, Billy Burns' kick for the consolation try at the end, crossfield for Jacob Stockdale to finish, excellent flash, but again, flash in the pan. So what you say has to be backed up by your actions. And right now, there's lots of good things being said whether it's from Dan McFarland or the players, lots of great things and ambition. But that's not being mirrored or backed up by the actual physical. Like watching the game again, you're kind of asking what is going on in your head for all these little switch offs, because their work these are international caliber players, and I think it is kind of a lack in confidence, the inconsistency. But really on the Quins performance, to me, it was just came down to hunger, game management a little bit, like even Nathan Doak chucking the ball out, trying to keep it alive, but at the bottom of a ruck where you can't see where your players are, and it was an intercept try again for Quins. They were just all on the backs of Ulster's mistakes more so than there was great kicks and quick thinking by Liner and Smith, but you have to expect that from Quins and the style they play. But I mean, Ulster were well able. So yes, you don't want to be in the Champions Cup, but if you want to really prove me wrong or any doubters wrong or yourselves wrong, go and win it. I think they have the calibre to win it. But right now I think things need to change, and there needs to be a drastic change to bring back the consistency and really get this team clicking. Now,
they'll probably welcome the break now to regroup. Moving on to Leinster. They left it late to get the bonus point, but again they got the job done. That game finished 27-10 against Leicester. They haven't hit their straps, but they did what they needed to and finished second in the seeding. They beat everyone in their pool, so they are probably where they want to be at this stage.
Yeah, and quite comfortably as well. I think slow start, obviously to go 10 points down, but then just they didn't need to get out of second gear. They're in control. You're not worried. There's no panic amongst the players, even though they go behind. They just stick to their process of what they're trying to do. And then they just overpower teams now, and they have such quality across the park, and Leicester have no answer for them. And again, we can talk about the last 16 of they played them again, and that's going to be a daunting task for the Tigers players and supporters to come over to the Aviva to go, we've got to do this again, and they'll probably be well up for this one, even more so, and it's and look, again, I don't know, maybe we'll speak about it later, but the fact you've got 5 of the quarterfinals being group games again in the last 16s.
Disappointing, isn't it?
It is. It just takes a little bit off, and okay, if 1 or 2 results are gone other ways, then there's a different knock-on effect, but it's still group stages again, and it's just not it just like some of the games should be, oh my God, great games, but then like, oh, okay, let's repeat again.
It doesn't have that same excitement.
Unfortunately not, no, but look, again, Leinster doing what they need to do, tick all the boxes. I'm sure Leo's delighted. No major injuries. A
setback again for Harry Byrne.
Yeah, it's frustrating for Harry. I'm sure it's like he puts in performances, but he just needs that consistency of performance, and it's the word associated. I'm sure it's going to be in the Six Nations too. Yeah. Can he back up training sessions? Can he back up some games? Well, if he gets the games, can he stay fit for the weeks to be involved for the match day 23? But that would be the only one. And then obviously Frawley took a knock as well at the 10 position, but they're just in complete control. They're not under pressure. And it's knockout stages. As Leinster just need to get some silverware this year. I've said it before in the show, they need to come away with something this year.
Were you impressed by them, Lindsay? Are you happy with the momentum they've been building now?
Yeah, I think they're probably inconsistent even within games. They show flashes of exactly what they can do. Probably line breaks. Thought Robbie Henshaw was back to his best. He was lively. I loved Mike Ross's synopsis of Joe McCarthy, and he's just an ignorant young lad. And what he means by that is nothing phases him, and I think he's just willing to get stuck in. He probably was on the cusp maybe of a yellow card. His enthusiasm was just
definitely plays on the edge.
Oh, but listen, as myself, and that's the exciting part of him, and I can't wait to see what he does. But same with Ryan Bard. So there was glimpses of very good individual performances. I think they will probably worry. I'm worried about their D a little bit. Sometimes they're narrow. We got caught in the blind side because of the fold. Larmour was left, as was Gibson Park, with some big men coming at them. So I think they'll be very happy where they are. There's absolutely glimpses. They're probably simmering at around 60%.
But still sitting top of the URC, finished second in the seedings. So they'll probably be satisfied that they're winning, not at their best, and that they have stuff to work on. There's no chance of complacency.
It's like building the blocks of Lego. I think they're just happily just moving along and building on layer on layer, week by week. I think this side last year were probably like all about Leinster and there's no way anyone's going to touch them. Then it implodes at the knockout stages. I think they've only lost ever at semi-final or final stage over the last 5 years, if I'm right with that stat. That's testament to the team they are. But like James said, they're a big club who's invested a lot of time and effort and built up a structure underneath that's come to fruition. They're one of the top class teams, but it hasn't been matched by the silverware after their 4 stars. So the elusive 5th hopefully be on that jersey this year. But there's still work to be done. Like La Rochelle were impressive over the weekend. Toulouse were impressive. Like Dupont is nothing. You think, you've seen his hand all before, and then he just comes out with something. Now he's just unbelievable for that try for Ramos. So there's still big teams in there. So I think, not ideal they're playing Leicester again, but I think for me the mental side will bring something different. I think that's the only plus side for me, is that Leicester Tigers, they've met them 2 or 3 times over the last number of years, and I think this is going to mentally, have someone new come at them tactically, try and break them down, and let's see what they've got. So the mental resolve is the one side that they probably need to be tested in, rather than the rugby side of things.
And finally on to Munster. What can be said about Munster? They had that game. They were in the driving seat with 15 minutes to go, and the game management, and I suppose the lack of depth in their bench perhaps let them down again.
It's just so frustrating, I think, the last couple of games where you're going into that third quarter and you're comfortable, and like you take off a Peat O'Mahony and you kind of give some of the other guys a few minutes and it just falls apart. It's got to be so frustrating, especially when you're at home. I think you have to give credit to Northampton as well, especially Finn Smith. I thought his game management, given conditions in that second half, was a lot better. His mindset to go for the drop goal was like, I wasn't even thinking about that, and he's like a chess player 10 steps ahead of, okay, we get back in here, we get some points, keep that scoreboard ticking over, keep that pressure. And then Munster, are they fragile mentally a little bit in that third quarter where they're just trying to hang on? They nearly stop playing, which is frustrating. They get another opportunity to go back to Franklin's Gardens this time in a reverse fixture. It's a one-off game. They've a couple of months before, first week of April. So a bit of time, but again, it's just that frustration from a Munster side to capitulate a little bit and let them go back in. And look, you're going to hear Munster come out and say, we're not worried about it, it's fine, again.
But it has happened too often. It
has, yeah. And I think now, and this isn't probably a bad time for them to have a break. They lose some players to Ireland and now really get these young guys fully focused and fully controlled in what they're doing in the URC, and have that as a focus of playing for a full 80 minutes. Even if you're slow to start, finish strong, that's got to be a big area. If I was coaching, I'd say, last 20 minutes, let's make sure we finish really strong.
Because as you said there, as James said, they seem to stop playing after that Gavin Coombs try. Is it that they didn't have that experience on the pitch at the time with all the changes being made, that the power and experience that's needed to close out a game is lacking?
Yeah, I looked at that. So Coombs' try was on the 48th minute. They were 20-10 up at that stage, and you're thinking, right, they're coasting. They showed glimpses. It wasn't really until Northampton went down to 13 players in that first half, just for half time, where they actually started to really make chances. Before that, they hadn't. So now they're ahead in the game, and I think, the management, like, it was a penalty for Northampton, then the Smith drop goal, and now they're back in the game. So it is about the pressure, not giving away penalties, keeping the ball, and that's the management side. I think a big key area for me is the maul. I mean, they're really shipping tries and cannot manage the maul at this stage. They gave away again a try. Northampton got a turnover, and then they were able to manage the game and really close it out and keep possession. So if anything, like James said, I think it's just now looking at the young guys and putting them under pressure in training and giving them time in matches that they know what to do in the last 20 minutes, because it is a habit to get into, to know what to do, what's the right decision. And at this stage, it's like, don't give away penalties in key areas.
As Graham Roundtree said, daft penalties.
Daft penalties in kickable areas. And it's grand to give a penalty away if you're in the opposition's 22. You're not under jeopardy then. They're not in a kicking spot. Grand, they can kick for territory, but you're still enough distance away from your try line or for a kickable penalty to not be under that much pressure. And they're the times to give away a cheap penalty if you need to, but then be really disciplined when you're in your own half or your own 22 and you really need to get out of there. What's your exit play? And then I think pressure now that you don't have Mahoney on the pitch, who's your line out caller, both defensively, or Tyburn now that he'll be in with Ireland. What's your decisions on your defensive line out? What's your decision on your attacking wall? Your attacking line out. So there, I think the key areas for me they have to look at is just set pieces.
One other thing that Graham Rowntree mentioned as well is their inability to manage the conditions. And this is something we've seen against Leinster, against Exeter as well. Because against Toulon, we saw how good they are on the dry patch. But is it that their style of play is more suited to those conditions? And that is something that they have to look at changing a small bit to manage the weather better?
I think so, yeah. No, it's but I think like the way you play and the way Graham Rowntree and Mike Prendergast has them playing attackingly, that's fine. But you have to adjust for conditions straight away. You know, if it's a dry track and you want to put the ball into the winger's hands, it's all well and good, but if it's lashing rain and there's howling wind, it's not going to happen. So you rethink, okay, now we're just going to kick, put pressure, force mistakes, if that's what it's going to be, keep that scoreboard ticking over. Simple rugby. It's like, it's not rocket science to it. And sometimes you can overplay, try once or twice to get around the extremities. If it's not happening, someone drop in a pocket, play conditions again, just keep going forward. Especially your forwards will thank you if you're getting line-outs up there, putting them under pressure, you're going forward rather than trying to force it. Tackled on the wings, knock back, penalty against you, head drops, and it's a knock-on effect. You know, you have to play conditions, and maybe Munster aren't. You know, and just at the moment, and again, it's an opportunity when the likes of a Crowley stepped away. He's going to be with Ireland, and someone else gets an opportunity now to step in and control it and show what they can do. If it's Tony Butler, he can sit back and go, right, I'll play conditions, because someone's going to get game time, and it can only be good for Munster that other younger players are going to be exposed to this game time.
And they have a tough run in now. Their own fault, really. They're away to Northampton again, but again, Munster, backs against the wall. That's when they seem to step it up.
Yeah, and I think, like, look, these are all fixable. Like, it's funny, I'm laughing here, I'm listening to James, and it's kind of like a role reversing, isn't it? Like, Leinster were once the team that could only play in dry conditions and they couldn't really win dirty. Now we're looking at them and they're well able to just really graft out and grind out. So I think Munster, though it needed to evolve, the evolution of the Munster ethos and how they played, you need to probably get that foundation, a bit of DNA where you just chuck the ball up the jumper and you're able to win gain line that way and manage the game. So I think that will help when they get a lot of players back. You know, they're really struggling with injuries, and then, you know, depending on opposition, depending on conditions, it's horses for courses, is the old cliche. So look, I've no doubt they'll go to Franklin Gardens and get the win that they need, but just tweaked a little bit, that, you know, game management and hopefully a couple of young players that come up and put up their hand. But yeah, I think it's positive for them. I'm not too worried. They're all fixables now.
And they have time to rally now before the round of 16. All eyes now are firmly on the Six Nations, and Andy Farrell's squad gathered in the High Performance Centre today, and we had a chance to chat to Andy earlier, and this is what he had to say.
Andy, the expectation seems to have gone from winning the Six Nations to doing a Grand Slam. So, based on that, is the opening game on France, is that like do or die for the campaign?
Look, you know, and we all know that Six Nations is unbelievably tough to win. Never mind a Grand Slam, you know, and. The reason we love it is because everyone talks about getting off to a good start and momentum and blah blah blah, but it takes its own course after the first game, after the second. The most important thing is that you're in the frame come the last weekend, and that's what we're all trying to achieve.
And just on Jack Crowley, there's been people writing in the papers at the weekend that he needs to learn how to deal with pressure. Some people are saying he needs to be given time to do that. Some people are saying he needs to just do that immediately. So I'm interested to see what your approach might be for him.
Oh, just to help him and understand where his game's at and what that looks like within the Irish camp, and keep growing him as a player and a person. And
just, you said you didn't like being on the camera. Was there anybody who did love being on the camera and kind of played up to it a little bit?
David Kilcoyne, but he's not here anymore, so that's one bonus.
Dave Kilcoyne, will have to keep an eye out for him. I'm really looking forward to that, Doc. But that was at the Six Nations launch at the Guinness Storehouse earlier. Firstly, reaction to the squad. Lindsay, we haven't been chatting to you since the squad was announced last Wednesday. Pretty strong squad, no uncapped players in there, no surprises really.
Peter,
what was your reaction?
I'm delighted we went for consistency, I
expectations
suppose. I think the disappointment to the World Cup, you want to get back on the horse, and I think it'll go a long way for these players to just get. I think a Grand Slam is really something that, you know, the pressure going to France to win that opening game will be tough, but I have no doubt they'll do it. So looking forward to seeing some of the young guns probably starting, really putting their hand up. Delighted to see Calvin Nash back in there and getting it. I think we had to pick our players, and he was definitely one I was liking to see. Same with Ryan Bard, and I'm not sure now with Tom Hearn after being knocked out and injured over the weekend, but hopefully he'll be back in. I know he's only in the extended along with Prendergast, but it's exciting to see them back in. So yeah, looking forward to it now.
Yeah, he's named 3 training panellists: Ollie Jaeger, Tom Ahern and Sam Prendergast, but as I said, no uncapped players, James, which would indicate that they're really focused on winning this Six Nations as opposed to a whole new restart after the World Cup.
Yeah, and I guess we don't really panic over here. I think if this is England, you'd see a raft of changes and maybe a whole new squad as they brought in a lot of younger players, even across some of the other ones. I think the bread and butter is the Six Nations for us, you know, and I think financially for the IRFU, it's worth a hell of a lot of money. So the higher up you finish, the more you're going to get. So I think we like to perform strongly. We don't make too many changes, and he's been consistent in that. Yeah, it's great to see Tom Ahern, people like that, Prendergast in the training squad, Ollie Jaeger. Be interesting to see how he goes as well. But yeah, like it's a pretty kind of standard squad. The interesting thing is, obviously, first time at no Johnny Sexton, so Andy Farrell mentioned it there. It's going to be a big one, that selection of 10. You know, no Ross Byrne either, so there's 2 of you, and Joey Carbage, you know, and there's a lot of players who've missed out. So it's you've got Jack Crowley, you've got Harry Byrne, and you've got Kieran Frawley. Where they try and play these guys is going to be very interesting. For me, Jack Crowley's got his the jersey in his hands.
Surely
at the moment.
he's nailed on as number 1.
I think he has to be, but he's the most consistent 10 at the moment. If you look at Harry's been injured a little bit, and Kieran Frawley's multi-positional, so he's been dropping in and out again. He's the most consistent 10 at the moment, who's playing 10 consistently and getting the minutes under his belt and
playing well. He's
playing
exciting.
Well. Yeah, he is.
Would you be worried about his lack of game management at times, or is it just that he needs more experience and exposure at the highest level?
Exposure and experience unearths situations where he makes decisions, so they're either right decisions or wrong mistakes. Learning will only help his growth in this position. The fact that he has the likes of Peter O'Mahony there, Tyke Byrne, players he's played with, experienced players at international level, that'll only just really galvanise him. Obviously Gibson Park is probably the top leader for 9, and I think it'll be nice that he is experienced at that. He's also very similar to Craig Casey in how quick they want to play the ruck. So I love the way you can always see him looking, and he's always looking for gaps or what's the next thing, what's the next decision. And that would have been the same as Johnny Sexton. He's not afraid to make the decision based on what he sees. He will obviously execute the game plan that they want. But I think he's an exciting player, and he has a whole array of talent that, you know, I hope to see that he'll showcase that. But I think for him, just consistency, build his confidence, and like cement that. With that consistency, he will cement the 10 jersey. If I could get that out of my mouth as much as I could.
Go on. I was going to say, I think with the French game up first as well is a pretty tough task. You know, it's in Marseille.
That's the biggest game he'll ever play.
Yeah, you know, and there's some learnings there. You know, of like going over there, and if you can handle that cauldron, especially post World Cup France, and they'll be certainly fired up, the French supporters, to get behind them, and it's going to be what an opener, you know. And again, he mentioned it there. It's one that can kind of Grand Slam or no Grand Slam, and
he doesn't shy away though, does he?
No, and I don't think he needs
unnerves him. Like,
no, I don't think so, and I think this side are like, you go over there and it depends, like a bit of a change of the guard in certain positions, but I think we have a squad that can do something, you know, and it's a World Cup cycle, so we don't need to panic if things don't go according to plan, and if some partnerships don't work, give it time, and once they get time, they'll embed it. But it's going to be an interesting Six Nations, because I back ourselves against every other nation. I just think this French side, I don't want to go too much about the first game, but like this French side first up, it's tough. Even
without Dupont.
No, but they still have they named Gregory Aldrich as their captain, and he was stand out in the World Cup. Like, he is world class at there, and I think they've so many players that are remaining from the World Cup, and you know, they were definitely worth the you know, the ticket stub in, like they were exceptional. So I expect them to also build on the back of that World Cup, and disappointing for them. But I think we're in a good place. I agree with James. I think it's good, it's exciting, it's consistency. The boys will be egging to get back into camp. I know Peat O'Mahony said that, you know, in all the talk, that was just extra noise for him. He was just so proud, and huge congratulations to him. I know when you say it's a boyhood dream for any athlete, you know, it's one that's memorable for him, and I think he's deserved it. So the best of luck with the tournament as it goes on.
Well, on the captaincy, let's hear from Ireland's captain, Peter O'Mahony.
Peter, a lot of people have been saying that this might be your last Six Nations. Does that kind of talk annoy you going into this, or does it bother you at all?
Look, there's been a lot of talk about me and my situation over the last few weeks. Since I've got the phone call from Andy, it's kind of been kind of a pinch yourself moment, and I've been enjoying myself, and you know, turning the page now since the game of the weekend to look forward to the next 2 weeks, and just looking forward to getting back into camp with the lads. You know, I haven't seen them since obviously you know, we left France, and obviously the disappointment of that. You know, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into a bit of work and seeing everyone again, and getting back on the one page.
You spoke previously about the likes of Paul O'Connell and the older Munster players almost breeding you to be the captain when you're a bit younger coming through. Is there anybody in the Ireland camp now, the younger players, that you see as a potential leader in the future?
Look, there's lots of guys who I see as potential leaders and are very much leaders of the group at the moment. You know, the leadership group that was under Johnny, including myself and the guys that are still there now. You know, I'll be hugely dependent on, and you know, be looking for advice and help. You know, all along the way. You know, it's far from a one-man job, this role, and I think, I'm sure Johnny would say the same. He was very lucky with the group he had under him, and you know, I'd be no different. You know, we've grown that group quite significantly over the last few years, and you know, it's a group that takes responsibility well and leads incredibly well, and I think that group is only going to get bigger with the quality of player that we have in our squad at the moment.
Just finally from me, Johnny Sexton's approach was, let's say, fiery towards the referees. Do you have an approach that you're going to be taking into the Six Nations that might differ from what you've done in the past, or are you just going to keep doing what you did with the likes of Munster?
Look, I've been engaging with them for a long time, and I haven't thought about it hugely, but you know, looking to work with them as well as I can. You know, it's I know it's a difficult role, it's a tough role, but it's a very important role as well, and as is my role to you know, to communicate as well and as properly as possible, and hopefully we can all do our best to work as well as we can.
We weren't sure if Andy Farrell would start the rebuild by appointing a new captain, or would he go for continuity and experience. He's gone for the latter. Peter O'Mahony is a born leader, has been since he started playing. Was he the obvious successor to Johnny Sexton?
For me, yes, absolutely. When you think about it and you kind of sit back in the light of day and you can kind of have questions with your friends and kind of go, oh, who might be captain? But he's the one that pops to the top the whole time. You know, he's been there, he's done it. I know he's captained the side previously, but this is a first proper appointment for him. He's done it for Munster for years, and it's thoroughly deserved. You know, Lindsay mentioned it there, like all the superlatives you can say about him as a person, as a leader. He's certainly the right person, as I would see it, coming into the Six Nations anyway, and who knows beyond.
The contract situation with Munster and the IRFU seems to be a bit of a shambles. It seems to be ongoing as well. Hopefully they'll get it wrapped up and sorted. But surely the obvious answer is that the IRFU would extend his central contract now that he's captain of Ireland.
I don't see why they wouldn't even extend it. Like, they extended it last year for a short period for the year, and they can do that. You know, they've done it with the likes of Cian Healy, and it was great to see him back in the squad. I think he's third leading on the caps list, so hopefully more out of him. So it's a bit strange, and I find it disappointing that, you know, that has taken possibly a little bit of the gloss off, that's the background noise as well, is part of the chat to, you know, to sort this contract. That's the kind of business side of things that needs to be looked after off the pitch and away from, I suppose, media and our stuff, you know, because at the end of the day, Peter O'Mahony, like James has said, has really earned his captaincy. He's really earned that role. I watched him for his try that Calvin Nash game over the weekend against Northampton, and if you see the reaction of his own players as well as we've seen with Irish players, I think it just absolutely underpins exactly how important he is to the squad. And I always like to see the reaction of people, because humans can't hide their feelings, and they obviously have the utmost respect for him, because they don't go celebrating and cheering like that when he on his return from injury and scoring a try, and that it just epitomises the man he is. So I think he's going to be central. I think it's a good decision to keep experience, because there's a lot of young guys there who are just, dipping their toes in international rugby. And I think there's probably no one there, and you might have a different opinion, James, but I don't think there's no one there. There isn't a player there right now ripened enough to take that captaincy into the long term. I think this is a good decision, and again, keep blooding the players on the skill sets wise and getting experience with tests and managing game situations. And then, there are so many leaders in the background, but their time will come.
Well, that's the best way to bring the next leader through. This is the best way to work on the succession plan. Who do you think will be falling behind Peter O'Mahony now and looking to follow in his footsteps?
I don't it's a tough situation, I suppose, to call a captain. For me, when I was playing, I used to love having a forward as a captain, just because they're in there in the cold face the whole time, and they're dealing with the referee. And if you had a winger running in, it just breaks momentum. I think if you have a 10, at least he's close to the referee as well. But who's there? Look, you've got people like Henderson who's in there, who's been captain for Ulster as well, and there's experience across the board. I think, would you look at someone outside shout like a Caelan Doris maybe down the line? He's unbelievably world class at the moment, and how he's played, how he is as a leader. I don't know within the group, I'm not sure, but there's experienced good players out there, and not necessarily Peat be the one who's going to speak in that group, but once you're out in the field, everyone knows what they're doing at that level, and they have the right talk. But behind it, it'll be a tough decision, because you've lost obviously Johnny, who's gone there, and if Peat does it now, and say for argument's sake that Peat's going to finish up,
well, who's to say he won't make the next World Cup?
Well, that's it. Look, it's up to it's up to Peter as well, because maybe the question has to go, what do you want to do, Peter? Instead of going, you haven't been offered a contract, and does he want to continue? Maybe he does. Look, I think he does now on the back of the captaincy. Maybe he was questioning it by the way it says. I had that conversation, and a pinch himself moment, as he said, and maybe that's given him that little bit of injection to go, I'll keep going, I'm loving it, and I'm really enjoying myself, and it's all about enjoying himself. Once he loses that smile, then it's time to go.
Well, we saw the difference he made to Munster when he came on against Toulon, when he came back. It's not just his presence on the pitch, it's what he gives as a player, and he's going to be a nailed on starter.
Hugely, and I think when you're a captain, he speaks so well. I think that's a given. I can only imagine some of the speeches that he is. But again, I think for me personally, a captain, you thrive on the fact that they back it up with action. And my God, he's probably had this, nearly a second breakout of his Irish career anyway in the last 24 months. I thought he was playing some of the best rugby he's ever played. He looks fit, turnovers, getting involved, not afraid to get a bit mouthy with some players who need to put a bit of manners on them. So I don't think it's ever a case with Peter O'Mahony. I think his endeavour and his passion will never lighten or never weaken, but I think maybe it could be a case like rugby, it's a game, it's a war of attrition, and sometimes the body might make the decision more so than the heart or the head. So he's had a couple of injuries. He was long standing off with that shoulder, wasn't it? So I think if he can stay fit, I think, listen, reach for the stars, Pete, keep going, and once he's playing well, and as I said, he's a huge character in there. I wouldn't put a expiry date on him anyway for now.
Well, we've Ireland in the hunt for back-to-back Grand Slams this year. We'll go in detail next week as we look ahead to the first round of the Six Nations. But just looking at other squads, we have Ireland without Johnny Sexton, we have France without Dupont, we have England without Owen Farrell. That's a whole lot of experience gone. Are Ireland still favourites heading into the competition, do you think?
Yeah, I do. I would pretty much put them level with France, I still think. Just because we France away first up, because there's so much unknown in there, and if you play them at the end, you kind of get a bit of momentum, and you know who's playing well and who's not. You can kind of call it a little bit more, but that kind of unknown quantity of going to France and playing them first game is going to be difficult. But you've mentioned some of the players that are missing there. Farrell's going to be huge for England. England do things completely differently to us, and they'll revamp their squad, which they have, and they've new coaches going to be coming in post this, or is it this Six Nations they're in? Is Felix Jones in now?
Yeah.
So it's a great chance for them to lay down a marker, and it's kind of Borthwick's first
real crack, isn't it?
Yeah, because he was drafted in pre-World Cup, and now it's like, okay, this is when he was supposed to have come in, and it's a good opportunity for them to build. But England build for 4 years. They're all World Cup cycles, I don't think we are, as I mentioned before. So Wales again, youthful side, and Scotland, I think we should have enough to
They went for the co-captaincy.
Oh, for God's sake. Yeah, I was going to say, actually, when we were chatting about Ireland captain, I was like, well, whoever fill the shoes of Peat O'Mahony, it will not be, it won't be a co-captaincy. I was interested with Wales. Their captain now is 21, so they're obviously starting from the ground up. I don't see kind of Wales and Scotland, without being disrespectful. I think, again, they will probably start afresh. And they don't have what I feel is as much talent coming up through the under-20 system from what I've experienced and watched between their Six Nations and the World Championship. We're in good stead, but I think France, you never know where you are until the first game of Six Nations, regardless of the opposition. But I mean, you don't want to go to France, but I do think England might be a dark horse, because I don't think it's going to be a bad thing with Farrell retiring, because again, there's a huge reliance on such experience, and I think for him as well, maybe just to get that love of rugby back and just take some time out. Maybe, he's been an exceptional player, but I don't think it's a bad thing.
Lancaster in Racing.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good move for him. But I also think that they've brought in some changes, England. I think, there was all this talk about England being in dire straits, but I don't think their clubs are showing that. There's been some exceptional. The top six in the Prem are performing very well in Europe, and so I do think they'll be a dark horse. I think it would be fine, but I still think they'll kind of remind them. They'll take opportunity to remind the world that they're still one of the big powerhouses in world rugby.
Well, the excitement is really starting to build now. My thanks to Lindsay and James. We'll leave it there for this week. We'll be back again on House of Rugby next week as we look ahead to round 1 of the Six Nations.
Sports Show presents House of Rugby.